Like, we don't have black people in justice. We don't have much black people as a senator, state councilor, federal councilor. We have more white people. For example, Salvador, 89% of the population of Salvador is black. But the parliament of Salvador, 90% is white.
How come?
Gentrification is a real big deal. Especially because it's a black neighborhood. Officially, it's a black neighborhood. But when the money comes, we know what's the next process. Yeah. We have more white people practicing Afro-religion than black people. Because they teach black people Afro-religion is a devil religion. It is not. Making people deny their own culture was like the black movement. That's why you don't hear a thing about black movement in Brazil. Because any mobilization, the dictators go there, hunt you down, jail, torture. If you die, you die. Simple like that. One of the most important engineers we had in Brazil, very recently we discovered he was black.
Oh.
Yeah. Imperial engineer. All construction in Brazil had to pass by him.
Ah.
But he was introduced as a white person, not as a black.
Ah.
We have a lot of people to talk about it. A lot of. The church in Brazil, they were responsible to help with the colonization. In the United States, we never had a prohibition between a interracial couple, interracial marriage. In fact, we had a government motivation.
Oh, for interracial.
Yeah, the idea for interracial movement is to reduce the black population in Brazil.
Yeah.
That was like our political plan designed in 1911 to make the population smaller,
Less black.
and removing the culture. That's why samba was forbidden, capoeira was forbidden, Afro-religion was forbidden. Everything connected black, forbidden.
The largest black population outside Africa is found in Brazil. My name is African Tigress, a content creator from Kenya in Africa. I have traveled tens of thousands of miles, and right now I am in Brazil. And guess what? I want to go to a place called Little Africa right here in Brazil. I'm so excited. I can't wait to meet my brothers and sisters across the continent. So come with me and let's do this. Getting to Little Africa was a powerful experience. We didn't know anyone there at first, but luckily we met Eddie, a black Brazilian with a wealth of knowledge about the area. He welcomed us and shared his insights and allowed us to listen, learn, and truly connect to the history and culture of the place. This episode is so deep and meaningful. It really opened my eyes to the rich legacy of the Afro-Brazilian resistance and identity. I hope you enjoy it too. Before we proceed, have you liked the video? Please hit the like button, share, and subscribe. Let's continue.
We are 203 million people. 56% of the country is black, okay? From these 203 million, 60% are women.
Oh.
If I ask you about Brazilian cultural reference, like music, what's the first music style come to your mind?
Samba.
Nice. I love when the people say samba. Samba is black music. I was talking about carnival. Carnival defines the Brazil. But one thing very important, the carnival probably you know is the carnival with a lot of feathers, the float, a lot of colorful glitter things. That's not Brazilian carnival. Sorry. That's Rio de Janeiro carnival. Because Salvador is different. Northeast is different. Minas Gerais is different. They have their own carnival. The carnival you know is Rio de Janeiro. And that's the important part. The carnival everyone knows comes from black culture and favelas. And that's why Little Africa becomes so important for us. Something very interesting when you talk about carnival. Carnival is Brazilian culture, but it's a culture from Rio de Janeiro. It's a culture from favelas. It's a culture from black neighborhoods. Brazilians are very superstitious people. But this one represents the god of thunder. If I say about indigenous mythology, is Tupã. In indigenous mythology, but I want something more close to me. African culture. Do you have the reference of the god of thunder from Yoruba mythology? Shango.
Oh.
This is the religion I follow. But why I did Catholic religion? Because my mom never allowed me to wear these beads, because religious intolerance. Yeah. Religious intolerance, it's one tentacle for one thing we call racism. When you hate the black culture, racism. When you deny the black culture in certain cultural influences, racism. Thor uses a hammer, right? Zeus, a lightning rod. Yeah. Shango, he uses an axe. Ah. To be more exactly, a double-faced axe. Why? Because he's the god of the karmic justice. Whatever you do, returns to you. That's why a double-faced axe. When you claim the power of Shango, you don't claim the justice because you're right. You claim the justice because you need a fair justice. That's why a double-faced axe.
You were born and raised here in Little Africa?
Born and raised in Rio de Janeiro. Not in Little Africa. Born and raised in one favela of Rio. Yeah. It's next to Copacabana. My favela is called Babylonia. That's where I live.
Oh, okay.
So I'm born and raised. My family is like, I am the third generation born and raised in favela.
Oh, okay.
My daughter is the fourth. Okay. And when I was talking about the favela change, it's part of the slavery heritage, because we consider in favela, to change, you have to break the cycle. Yeah. If you do not break the cycle, nothing change. Okay. And what's the breaking cycle happen in my family? My father decided to refuse to let my brother and I to work. He said, go to study, focus on studying, that's it. So, and I represent the first generation of my family who did all the studies. Basic studies, of course. Okay. Now I speak English, Spanish, a little bit French, so I work a lot with the tourists because I had a good education. Okay. I have a daughter, she's 21 years old, and she represents of my family the fourth generation born and raised in favela. Okay. She's 21 years old now, and what she's doing, she's another cycling break in my family because she represents the first person of my family to go to university. Ah. In my favela, she's the first person? The first person of my family to go to university.
The entire favela?
No, in the favela. In the favela, she's the first to go to a medicine school.
Oh, wow. That's impressive. Very impressive.
If she succeeded, she want to do one thing. She want to leave favela. If she leave favela and have a baby, we're going to have the first generation of my family out of the favela. Ah. So we have great chance to achieve that in 4 generations. Yeah. Some people need to take 8 generations just to go to school. Later, more generations to go to university. That's the process.
So is Little Africa also considered a favela?
No. The difference of a favela in neighborhood is not because we have a house in the hills, we have favela. No, the definition to be called a favela is very simple. What's simple? Nobody has land document. Oh. But that's another history I talk forward, because in forward you're gonna see the first favela made in Brazil. Okay. Okay? Okay. Today we have a lot of people using a very, I don't want to say offensive words, but they're kind of a be honest people, saying, black people used to slave other black people too. Look, slavery process never was generational punishment. Never was. Slavery process, Vikings used to do slaves, Greek used to do slaves, Japanese used to do slaves, but never was generational process. The only people who suffered that was black people, and black people only, because they used the religious base. Are you black because you are cursed by God? Right? And here, black people were forced to become a Catholic. Different than the process in Caribbean islands. Before United States had 2 slavery process different than Brazil. In Brazil, we have the straight continental transport from Africa to Brazil. United States, they had the same. If you go to the East Coast, New York, they had the straight transport from Africa. But if you go to the South, the black people, they came from Caribbean islands, mostly. Because in Caribbean islands, they were like quarantine area for black people. After 1 or 2 generations, when the black people had no trace from Africa, they were transported from the United States. That's why you don't have a mention of Afro-religion in the United States. You don't have. That's a new movement today. We have a movie now talking now, The Sinners. You have a mention of the Orishas now. But that's not the American culture, but it's a Brazilian culture. Because the black people came straight, but they said, you now Catholic. Okay, I'm a Catholic. So we adapted the Afro-religion to the Catholic. So we're still praying to Shango. But instead to say Shango, I say Sant Geronimo. I use the Catholic reference. Or I can use another one, Saint Peter. Who is Saint Peter in the Catholic tradition? He's the one who controls the gate to enter in heaven. Shango is the god who decides who goes to heaven or stay on earth. We use the Catholic references to say my God. What we do the difference? We use a stone just to say this is my Orisha, and the image is just a pretend thing to say, oh look, I'm praying for your God. But in fact, we are praying to ours. That's why we have a lot of Brazilian references for Orishas using Catholic references, okay? But some black people participate in brotherhoods, especially because they were forced to become Catholics. They were forced to become a Christian. That's why we have a lot of Catholic and Afro-religion mixed in Brazil, okay? That represents a brotherhood, and this brotherhood work in Little Africa, okay? And this brotherhood, by the way, accepted black people and never forced them to become a Catholic. They said, you can practice whatever you want, but remember who you are. You don't need to say much what they are saying, right? You can do whatever you want, but remember, you are a slave. Simple like that. In our history classes, black people came from Africa to become slaves in Brazil, to serve the crown, things like that. That's what they used to say. But when they say that, they erase what they used to be in Africa. Now we know they were kings, queens, engineers, architects, hunters, medicals, and what? Blacksmithing. Some of the black people who knew blacksmithing, they used to do metal work. And now comes a very important point. Black person who had influence to buy things from that, black people who had the church as a support, and black people doing the things by their own. What we have you heard the thing called TIGRESS? TIGRESS. Never heard that name? Okay. Okay, let me just use another one. Have you heard the word called Sankofa?
Yeah.
Sankofa. Sankofa. Okay, what do you mean Sankofa? Sankofa means remember where you came from. That's the name Sankofa. This is how it looks like Sankofa. A bird looking to the back.
Yeah.
This is how it looks Sankofa. A bird looks to the back. Sankofa. Okay? What are TIGRESS? TIGRESS are different symbols, a lot of symbols, where it's more from the coast of gold from Africa, where they use that label as a family crest. What do you mean with that? Some black people who knew blacksmithing techniques, they give their label in the metal work. What's the label? Birds, flowers, or leaves. Okay, but if I see a TIGRESS in the metal work, I know which house I can have help. That's become a hidden communication between black people. Okay? They knew where is Uncle Tom, where is not Uncle Tom. That's become like a subliminal message in Little Africa. That's how black people start communicating, because you couldn't say openly. That's why you would, that has a difference. Okay, I can ask for help. For example, remember when I said, today we can say what we are, in the past you couldn't. See the yellow house, you see a shell on top. The symbol of the shell is connected with illuminism. So it means in this house lived a person progressive, who accepted the differences, who was a favor to end slavery. So you couldn't say openly. That's why you have the hidden message. For example, there is a Brazilian message there you don't know. Only Brazilians know. Surrounded by 4 mountains. Okay, each mountain had a fortress on top of that hill, okay? See that white building on top? Yeah. That's one of the fortresses built since 16th century. If you see the white building on top, in the bottom of the hill, you see like a wall made of stones. That's the original fortress since 16th century. One of the fortresses you used to protect Rio de Janeiro, okay?
Okay.
And from here, you can see the official limitation of the Rio, because that area surrounded by 4 mountains, we used to call urbis. The parts outside of the walls, we used to call suburbis. That's why we have the origin of the words urban and suburban. In the past, this used to be the suburb area of Rio de Janeiro. Today is center of Rio, downtown.
Oh.
That's why we have to be aware, because we have a word very famous coming right now, call it gentrification.
Ah.
Gentrification is a real big deal, especially because it's a black neighborhood. Officially it's a black neighborhood, but when the money comes, okay, we know what's the next process. Yeah. Okay? That's why history is necessary to defend the territory, okay? He said, don't do noise, don't do noise. Bom dia, meu mestre. Here we can see the best sacá. Best sacá is exactly this flower. You see in the bottom, in the top, the flower. So best sacá is this one. This symbolizes power, richness, union. Okay? And this become a hidden communication between black people. Okay? In the United States, we never had a prohibition between a interracial couple, interracial marriage. In fact, we had a government motivation.
Oh, for interracial.
Yeah, the idea for interracial movement is to reduce the black population in Brazil.
Yeah.
That was like our political plan designed in 1911 to make the population smaller.
Less black. That's and removing the culture. That's why samba was forbidden, capoeira was forbidden, Afro-religion was forbidden. Everything connected black forbidden. That's the reason. Okay. But that happened in a lot of South America, whitening the race.
For example, if we talk about South America, we have to talk about 2 kinds of slavery. We had the Portuguese slavery, where we had some killing people, but the idea was to make them Catholic. Different than the colonization by Spain, where they kill everyone and turned everyone into Catholics. For example, if you search for Inca, Maya, Aztec, you don't have much recording just like we have. We still have the indigenous people. You have the descendants of the Aztecas, Incas, and Mayas, but the culture in practice, not much, because everything was eliminated. So, right here we have the church. See the symbol? Pay attention. This will be one of the most common symbols you're going to see in Little Africa. And this was what the church who administrate Little Africa neighborhood, okay? This church, by the way, accepted black people to do everything. Music, capoeira, and religion. They were not forced to become Catholics, but the church make them sure to understand who they are in that moment. They accept to do everything. For example, the priest, the guy called it Priest Francisco da Mota, he let in documents saying we have to let them practice their culture to don't have any problem in this territory. That's the reason this church allowed black people to do their things. But my real important information in this area, come here. One information I have to show you, and I was missing that.
Okay.
I like to call these as the wall of resistance, okay? We have there Dandara, Auntie Seata, Auntie Lucia, Nelson Mandela, and one guy in the beginning. The guy in the beginning, he's called Zumbi. Zumbi, he was one of the most important warriors we had in black history in Brazil. Why? Because he was one of the defenders of the quilombos. What is quilombo? Quilombo, it's like a refugee camp for black people live free. Senzala, physical and mental prison for black people. Senzala was the place for black people have forced works in coffee farm, sugar cane, in everywhere. Quilombo is the place where the black feel free. So that's why a lot of hideouts we had in Brazil. So if you see the name Quilombo, Quilombo is a protected place just like indigenous village in Brazil, okay? And where are these neighborhoods? In everywhere. Here we have the, not Little Africa, but we have forward a place called Pedra do Sal, where we have samba. There we have a quilombo. We have some favelas we consider a modern quilombo because of the concentration of black people in that territory and the valorization of their culture. Oh, one thing is very interesting, okay? In black neighborhoods, one thing you're gonna see in front of the houses, plants. Lots of plants. Why? 3 reasons. Cuisine, medicine, and spirituality. For cuisine, come here. I got one. I got one here. Let me just try another one. Another one here. These, if you look, they're quite similar, isn't it? They're quite similar.
Yeah.
The texture, the color, the appearance, they're very similar, but they're very different. Okay? What is this one? This one. This one, it's very famous. It's called peppermint. Okay? In Portuguese, we say hortelã-pimenta. What we use this for? We use in the kitchen to do spicy, especially steaks. Sorry. I'm a meat lover, sorry. I love meat. And Brazilians love picanha. Look. There is some cuisines in Brazil. I feel sorry if you're, sorry, I don't want to be canceled, but I have to say it. There is some country, there is some states, some cities in Brazil, if you are vegan, sorry. Sorry, I have to say that. If you are vegan, sorry. Because there is some dishes that are awesome. You must try. But in Afro-religion, we use this, we call this as Oxalá carpet. Oxalá is the origin of a peace. So when you have a stomachache, you bring the peace to your stomach. That's why Oxalá carpet. But the most famous plants we use in our houses are those 2. Can you see the snake plant? Mm-hmm. Okay, mother tongue plant. Here in Brazil, we have another names. We call those as, let me show you. St. George sword, Santa Barbara sword. Why that? That's a male and female.
How do you know?
The female has the yellow border. You have only green.
Oh.
That's a male. When you see the yellow border, that's a female. So that's Santa Barbara, that's St. George. But why Catholic scents? Because in the black neighborhoods, these plants, we use that for 3 reasons. First, spiritual protection. That's why we keep these plants in front of the doors or windows. Because in the African mythology, we believe these plants, they are natural protection against evil forces. Because these represent orishas. Santa Barbara, because of the syncretism, she represents Oya, the goddess of wind. That one, St. George's sword, we call Ogun. Ogun is the god of war from Yoruba mythology, or the god of iron. We keep that orisha to protect our path, life path. That's why we keep it in front of the houses. The church in Brazil, they were responsible to help with the colonization, to teach the natives to speak Portuguese, teaching the natives about Christian theology, just like they did the same for Africans when they come from Africa to Brazil because of slavery, okay? The church, they were responsible not just because of the religious teaching, but education. So that's why when you look to Brazil, when you see church, sometimes you have next a school led by the church. So you can see here on top the same symbol of the church, okay? Let's continue.
Did the church advocate for abolition of slavery?
Huh?
Did the church advocate for abolition of slavery?
Not at all. We had the other people for that. The church, they wasn't like completely agree, but they said, okay, whatever you choose, we support. But we had a motivation. We had a lot of black people reference fight for the abolition, and some members of the monarchy, some members of the society supporting that. But the abolition came too late. The abolition came in May 13, 1888.
Brazil was the last one.
Yes, was the last one. And after the slavery ended, next year what we have, the end of the monarchy in Brazil.
Oh, okay.
Because by before the imperial family never fought to finish slavery in Brazil because we had independent governments in Brazil. So the emperor couldn't decide immediately to end the slavery. So they had to wait for the other people's decision. That's why we never had a concession to end the slavery. People say, the emperor Peter II, he was against the slavery. But okay, he was against. But what he did to end the slavery?
Nothing.
No movement.
Nothing.
One of the most important engineers we had in Brazil, very recently we discovered he was black.
Oh.
Yeah. The most important engineer in Brazil who had to build the train, the first sewage system in Rio.
What's their name?
His name André Rebouças. The Rebouças brothers. In the beginning, we thought they were white, but in fact, they were black. 2 biggest architect engineers of Brazil. André Rebouças, by the way, he was the imperial engineer. All construction in Brazil had to pass by him.
Ah.
But he was introduced as a white person, not as a black.
Ah.
We have a lot of people to talk about it. A lot of people. That's why this area is so important. For example, we have a group down there, but see the brown door?
Yeah.
So the brown door is a house called Casa Escrevivência. Escrevivência, translated to English, it's a union of 2 words, right living. Okay? Conceição Evaristo, she's a black writer. She lives here in Little Africa, and she made that house for people have access to her books and other black writers' books for free. Why that was a necessary initiative? Brazil's salary is about $240 a month, $260 a month. That's the salary in Brazil. So access to culture in Brazil, unfortunately, is too expensive. Books, too expensive. Imagine you have a salary $240 a month and you have to pay around $20 for one book. So that's expensive. Access to culture in Brazil, unfortunately, is expensive. That's why she made that library, for people to have access not to her books, but the other black writers' books for free. And this was a very important initiative because she's doing in a black neighborhood. In a black neighborhood, you know the stereotype, assimilation people say about the black neighborhoods, the ghettos.
Yeah.
Here she's trying to do different, okay? Giving access to people to the books for free, okay? Let's continue. Eu sou filho da noite estrelada, não sou de uma mulher só, toda mulher é minha amada, eu sou homem das ruas, filho da noite estrelada.
You wanna eat? Oh, smells so good.
Cheiro de carne assada isso daqui, cara.
Carne assada.
Ai, acertei!
Com ervas.
Olha! Tá pago já. Look, let's stay here in the shade because I have something to tell you. So, my friends, where are we right now?
Pedra do Sal.
Not yet. Pedra do Sal is straight ahead. We're gonna talk about that. We are in a place called now Largo da Prainha. Tudo bem? Magda, vou querer aquela latinha de 1 litro. Largo da Prainha is one of the most important spots in Little Africa, because this area was the quarantine area for the black people. When they come through the ships, they used to stay here. Why? Because all the buildings, they used to be called Zangu houses. Zangu, they were like the feed houses, because the black people stay in the ship during months. So they arrive here so dehydrated, so weak. So that's why this area become a quarantine area, where they receive the food, they have the food. Once they feel like healthy, they were transported to the slave market. That was the slave process in this area of Rio de Janeiro, okay? And the information we had is, from the Harbor area, the black people had the 2 directions. All those who arrived alive left where they stopped here, the quarantine area. All those who arrived dead or almost dead, they side. What we have there, the graveyard, the city dump, where they throw the whole garbage of the city. Today, what we have here, restaurants, bars, and the most important, a very good samba here, Tuesday to Sunday, 6 p.m. to 10 p.m. Yeah, it's an earlier samba. Eddie, I like to play all night. Okay, come here, do the party here. If you say, I'm cool, you can go back home. Or do like Eddie. I party here. Okay, should we go to another one? Okay, let's move to another one. Yeah, yeah, I like to party. And I'm a hardcore party boy.
Yeah.
My wife, she doesn't like that much. Okay, you can go home, I continue the party. My daughter and I continue the party. We love. And in this area, it's very interesting because you find one specific drink in this area. That's what you're gonna try. You must taste and you tell me your perception, what flavor you have there. Just to let you know, this drink was selected as the best drink of Rio de Janeiro 3 times in a row, 3 years in a row.
Okay.
And Eddie, can I find this drink in another place?
But I can
Just in Little Africa.
You can make it at home.
Yeah, you can make it, but to make equal, it will be very difficult. Simple. Tchim tchim.
Okay, ching ching.
Tchim tchim.
Ching ching.
Em português, você saúde ou tchim tchim?
Okay, ching ching. Okay, try it for the culture.
Ting, come here. Tests passion.
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 Passioni. Maracuja.
Delicious.
It's
É
a bit
viciante,
sour.
tá?
Really? Madame.
Passion fruit,
Guava.
ginger, and alcohol. De Batista, okay? That's her name, Mercedes Batista. Who was she? Mercedes Batista, She was the first black woman in Brazil to enter in the most important ballet group of Rio de Janeiro. Yeah, the first black woman to dance ballet in Rio. But she never had the main character. She never had a solo. She always danced in the background. She got sick of it. What she did, she quit ballet. She quit ballet and moved it to United States in 1960s. A good time to go, a black person going to United States 1960s. But what we have in Brazil in that time, dictatorship.
Oh.
What was worse? We don't know what to say. Yeah. But she left Brazil, what was a dictatorship. What's happened in black communities during the dictatorship? Shut the fuck up. Nobody say a thing. If you do that, jail. Schooler groups, they were going to jail. The schooler groups, they were going hunting down just because the government understand. If you have a free thinking, so you are a communist. That's why jail. Black communities, if students, they were hunting down, imagine the black movement. That's why you don't hear a thing about black movement in Brazil. Because any mobilization, the dictators go there, hunt you down, jail, torture. If you die, you die. Simple like that. Do you know one place was pursued by the dictators? Samba schools. Yeah, because the lyrics, they are Protestant lyrics. The songs is telling the history, it's talking about something. For example, remember I said about Zumbi? Zumbi grew, I think, 17th or 18th century. That's the time we had Zumbi, 17th or 18th century. That's when we had Zumbi, okay? You know one thing? Do you know when we talked about Zumbi? 1960s, where a samba school parade. One samba school did a parade talking about Zumbi. That's the first time Brazil heard about Zumbi. After that, we discovered we had other black references. After that kind of a parade, we discovered we had black people and that valor in history of Brazil because everything was hidden, okay? She, by the way, she was the first black lady to dance ballet in Brazil. She quit and she moved to the United States, but she moved to the United States on the invitation of one lady. Her name, Catherine Durham. Once she went there, she learned more about Afro dancing. But at the same time she learned about Afro dancing, Afro culture, she had experience to see things like Malcolm X's speech, Martin Luther King's speech. People said she became a Black Panther. I don't know if that's the truth, but she was involved with the Black Panther cause.
Yeah.
On the motivation for everything she saw in the United States, 70s she come back to Brazil and she created the first Afro-Brazilian dance group. That's why she has this dress. Because we consider the connection with our ancestrality is to dance with the foot on the floor, no shoes. That's why she's not wearing shoes. In Afro culture, in Brazil, we consider dance with the foot on the floor, its connection with our roots. Her greatest contribution, carnival.
Oh.
What she made what we call in Portuguese, comissão de frente. She did what in English, it's front commission. What's the front commission? It's the group initiating the carnival parade, the first block, doing like choreography dancing. Most part of the time, black dancers. She was the one doing that. It's samba school, Salgueiro. By the way, my samba school. If you decide to live in Rio de Janeiro, you have to do two things.
Yes.
Choose a football team to support and choose a samba school to support.
Okay.
I used to play drums in samba school during 9 years. Now I don't because I'm doing the carnival, I'm working. So that's why I do not play drums anymore. But I used to, my father's still playing drums in that summer school. He played for more than 20 years. I played just 9 years in that summer school. But when you talk about carnival, carnival is not a party, okay? For some people, it's party. But to us, it's a competition. But this lady here, it's very interesting because we discovered her history only after her death in 2014.
Oh.
Do you know one thing very interesting? we heard. Carnival is not just a party, it's a competition. And that competition brings back a lot of money to Rio de Janeiro. How much we made in this carnival? We spent it in the city, something like to 40 or 50 million dollars to make carnival. That's a lot of money.
Yeah.
How much is the return? $3 billion.
Wow.
That's what we earned in carnival. 5 days of party, $3 billion. That's what we make in carnival. A lot of money.
I'm sure Brazil.
Come here, let me show you one more thing here, this area here. So my friends, this mosaic here is very interesting, okay? This mosaic is very interesting. I was talking about Mercedes Batista and her contribution in carnival. Here in this picture, we're gonna talk about one guy called Hilário Jovino. Hilário Jovino, he was a lot of things. He was Ogã. Ogã is a very important function in Afro religion. Ogã is the person who plays the drums, invoking the spirits. That's a function in Afro religion, and that's only performed by men. In Afro religion, we have that things. Function performed by woman and function performed by men. He was Ogã, samba player, samba musician, capoeira fighter, a very skilled capoeira fighter, and a malandro. Malandro, it's kind of our, if I say malandro in English, malandro means hustler. He was one of the samba leader of the area in Little Africa, and he was responsible to invent one condition in carnival. What's condition? The flag bearer. If you see the carnival parade, you're gonna see a woman holding the flag in an avenue. So that's the function created by this guy. Why this necessity to do that? Because when the party ended, they made a carnival on the way back. Later start to mix the groups. That's why when they had the flag bearer, so you know which party starts and where starts another one. That's why the flag was necessary to identify each band was playing. Today, we use this to identify each carnival is doing the parade. One thing very important, to hold the flag is not just, I want to hold the flag. No, you have to be respected by the community to hold the flag. Because that's an honored condition. In Afro religion, we consider him a street guardian. Everyone who practices the religion called Umbanda and has him as a protector always carries something from him as protection. I have. For example, my guide, Malandro, is a gambler. And as a gambler, I have to carry two things in my wallet. I carry cards and, yeah. In this case, I have to carry dices. Yeah. This kind of enchanted dices. And as an Afro religion practice, he said, my guy said, Eddie, if you want to play, no worries. You can play whatever this number gives, no problem. But if you give specific numbers, attention. That's my message. Can I say that message to you? No, I can't.
Really? Okay.
Afro religions, remember what I said, the rule?
Yeah.
In silence.
It's your connection, no? It's my connection, not yours. So that's why
You don't
it's
say
my
everything.
secret.
Okay.
So in Rio de Janeiro, we have an altar in honor of him. Where? Lapa neighborhood. Do you know where is the Lapa Arcs?
Yep. Yeah.
You know the Celano Steps?
Yeah.
If you go aside of Celano Steps, you're gonna see altar of him. It's a guy wearing a white suit. So a lot of people lighting candles. So we have the male version, Zé Pilintra. The female version, Mary Razor. In Portuguese, say Maria Navalha. What's the man function? To keep you away from bad friendships. The woman version, to teach you to love yourself. The woman spirits in Afro religion teach you to love yourself. After to learn you love yourself, you're ready to talk with the God. Remember about the church I told you? Look at the symbol on top of the houses. These represent the church domination in the area. See those stone pillars down there? The boats used to be attached on those pillars. So the water used to come into this area. Here we have a little beach. So these stairs, they were carved by the black people during the slavery time. Because remember, this was a quarantine area. Yeah. Remember the church? We saw one hill, and here Pedro saw another hill. These two hills, the hill used to go until the bay, making like a little bay in Little Africa. So we have this hill crossing the bay and the other hill crossing the bay. So the black people stop it here. They come through the water, so they couldn't escape because they don't know how to swim. This hill and this hill, quite high, so they couldn't cross. And a fortress on top of the hill. So Little Africa was considered a perfect prison. We estimate in the harbor here, drop it around 1.5 million people in this harbor. That's just the estimation. We don't know the official number yet. But we estimate 1 million, 1.5 million stopped in the harbor of Little Africa. Okay? And here was the quarantine area for all the people dropped here. They used to stay in between these two hills and the fortress, waiting their time to go back, to go to the slavery area. But here become like a place for nostalgia. Because the black people, they knew if they leave this area, they never come back to their land. That's why they stay here close to the water. Because they say, I arrived here through the water. If I leave the water, I never come back. That's why they always stay here. And this was considered like an area for meeting. What kind of culture they used to do here? Samba.
Samba.
That's why Pedra do Sal is recognized as the birth, as the crib of samba. I can ask where the jazz born, people say the name of the city. I ask about where the hip hop born, people say the name of the city, but they don't know the place. Here in Rio de Janeiro, we know where the samba born. Exactly here, Little Africa, Pedra do Sal. I'm talking the history about the samba, but do you know one thing what makes me disturbing? Is the gentrification. What is happening? A construction. What is this construction? It will be a new hotel in Little Africa.
Really?
Yeah. If they build a hotel, what's gonna leave the place? The hotel or the noise?
Oh.
Yeah. We are in a countdown for the last samba rounds in Little Africa. We are in a countdown. Do you know what's happening? Yeah, it will be a hotel. Do you know what's happening? We call like itinerant samba. Now the Pedra do Sal, they're playing everywhere because they say, Pedra do Sal is not just one sport, it's in everywhere. That's sad. That's sad. That's sad. That's why history is necessary to keep the place, to defend the territory. But to talk about history, I have to talk about the origin. Where that history came from. The history came from these people here. Come here, let me show you the graffiti. The history of samba started with these people here. Okay? Here, who are in the picture? Who are in the graffitis? First, Pixinguinha. Amazing guy, amazing samba musician. Heitor dos Prazeres. This guy, Heitor dos Prazeres, he's the one who gave the name to the neighborhood Little Africa. He's the one who gave the name Little Africa to this area. Because officially, it's called Gamboa. That's the name of the neighborhood. Gamboa, that's the name of the neighborhood. But the nickname, Little Africa. Just because of him. He used to live in this area, okay? And João da Baiana. These are the three most important samba musicians. We call these guys as the Holy Trinidad of samba.
The Holy Trinidad.
Of samba. So they are the most important samba musicians. Okay, these three guys, they're important? Yes, they're very important. Do you know who is more important than these three guys?
Tia Ciata.
Tia Ciata. Tia Ciata, when you say the name Tia in black neighborhoods, Tia in English means aunt. But that's one thing funny. When you gave the name definition Tia, that person don't need to be from your family. she needs to be at least a respectful person in that territory. If she's a very respectful, instead of say madame or man, we say tia.
Tia.
And her sons, we cannot call them brother, we call them cousin. That's a definition in black neighborhoods or poor neighborhoods in Brazil. Aunt or cousin. It means you may not have a family blood connection, but you have feeling connection. Okay? And Aunt Seata, she was a slave. She was a slave. She came from Salvador. She born in Salvador. She was a slave, and she bought her freedom. She bought her freedom. She used to prepare what? Acarajé, coconut candy, and sell in the middle of the streets. Selling that, she bought her freedom. After buying her freedom, she earned a higher position in Afro-Religion church. Okay, she earned a high position, and because of that position, she was sent to Rio de Janeiro to lead a Santeria house in Little Africa. When a woman leads a Santeria house in one place, she automatically becomes the leader of the territory. Why a woman as a leader? Simple. Remember the cultural base, European, indigenous, and black. European, we consider in Brazil, patriarchal culture. Man rules. Indigenous and black, matriarchal. Woman leads. See the difference? Even the words. The woman doesn't rule, the woman leads. Yeah, and what I consider that kind of a culture should follow more in Brazil. The indigenous and black. Why? 56% is black, 60% are women. Why are we not following the indigenous and black culture? Why still following the European culture? That's the question we are doing today.
You should tell us. You're from Brazil.
Oh, it's kind of a 400 years of our generation learning. So we are for one of the things. I always shaved my hair, always. Today I refuse to do it because we consider today to send a black man or a black woman to cut hair, we consider that's racism. Because in the past, force black people to shave their hair was to remove their identity.
Because of the hair.
Yeah, because of their hair.
Yeah.
For example, braids in Africa, they were not just for decoration, but to recognize who was the leader, who was the king, the prince, the leader of that group. That's why the braids. The other reason for the braids, maps.
Maps, yeah.
The other things are maps, directions, where to go, especially Nagô braids. That one you can see mountains because of the curves, rivers. Yeah, that's the hidden message of the Nagô braids. And the third reason for the braids and Nagô braids, transporting seeds. Yeah, to transport seeds. Yeah. That's the three functions of the braids in the black people's hair. Hierarchy, maps, seeds transport. When the people say, I like the braid, okay, do you know the history of the braid? That's the history, hidden history. Because here in Brazil, we have a lot of people, we call that as cultural appropriation, okay? For example, what is happening today? We have more white people practicing Afro-religion than black people. We have more white people practicing Afro-religion than black people. Crazy, isn't it? Because they teach black people Afro-religion is a devil religion. It is not. Making people deny their own culture was like we call that as eugenic policy we had in Brazil. We had the eugenic policy to eliminate everything what was black, including samba. And samba was forbidden in Brazil. This lady here, by the way, she became the leader of the territory. What she used to do, she used to be like a spiritual leader for the local people and some people who want some of her services. And during the time when she was managing Little Africa, we had a president in Brazil called Venceslau Braz. And Venceslau Braz, he always had a wound in his leg, it never healed. Never healed. He traveled all over Brazil, he traveled all over the world trying to find a doctor to fix that problem. Nobody fixed it. Someone told him to search the witch of Little Africa. Aunt Seata.
The witch of?
The witch of Little Africa.
Oh.
Because she does Afro-religion, people consider that witchcraft. I would like to summon fire from nowhere, invoking dead people. It could be an amazing thing, but it's not.
Amazing.
It could be amazing. Imagine, I'm the god of thunder. My Orisha is the god of thunder. Imagine, Eddie, you have the power to summon lightning from nowhere. It could be, imagine, shut the fuck up. Boom. That could be amazing. For example, there is a dish in honor for my Orisha to get one of his wife, Oya. It's a dish called acarajé. In Africa, they have one called akara in Nigeria.
Yeah, they do.
Here in Brazil, we have acarajé. That's a dish for my Orisha. Fireball. That's the translation for acarajé.
Okay.
Because my Orisha is not just the god of thunder, but the god of fire too. So, she was a mental leader in Little Africa. She used to play buzos to a lot of people and give some spiritual healing to people. And the president asked her help before healing to people. And the president asked her help. Before to help the president, what she did, every person who follow Afro-religion always asked the Orishas if she could help or not. That's why we have the búzios. You see the shells? These are the shells where we play to see the future. Not the future, but the next step. We don't like to say future. The next step. And what the Orisha said to her, help them. And she helped it. After to help him, she gave to him a selection of herbs. Weeks later, the wound gone. The president becomes so happy, so excited for her help. And he said, Anciata, just ask whatever you want, I can give you. She asked two things. She asked for a telephone. Yeah, a telephone. Especially here in Little Africa, a telephone was necessary. Until 1830s. After 1830s, the continental transport was forbidden. The continental transport from Africa to Brazil, in the 1830s, forbidden. So what started to have is slave transport between Rio and Salvador. The two biggest slavery harbors. We start to transport between ourselves. Some people from Rio de Janeiro move it to Salvador. Some people from Salvador move it to Rio de Janeiro. And what happened? Families formed in both cities, Salvador and Rio. That's why the telephone becomes so important, because the communication between the families was through slavery ships. With the telephone, in Salvador, she started communicating each other by the telephone, so that helps. And a second thing she requested for the president, a job to her husband. It was provided immediately. He gave a job to her husband to where? To the police station. Police station. And what's happened? Samba, capoeira, Afro-religion was forbidden. So the police was responsible to arrest everyone who does that, play samba, capoeira, or Afro-religion. Okay? For example, let me just give one example. Every time when the samba players, they were in the street and the police was coming, they have to run through the streets to escape the police. Capoeira was more smarter. They have one kind of instrument with one string where they use a bamboo, a coconut, that's called berimbau. The berimbau, they have a specific rhythms to play, but there is one called horse walk. Horse walk. How is the horse walk? Is one sound what it makes like dun 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 stogon dun dun stogon togon 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 dun 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 stogon togon togon togon. That's the sound of a horse walk. Why? We had the capoeira round, people playing capoeira here. What we had in advance, the guys playing the instrument. When the police start to come, they do the horse walk to say, oh, the police is coming. The guys escape.
But can they change like the dance and the music so the police don't know?
No, the police didn't know that.
No, like when you change, no, like when they get, instead of running, can they just change and dance to something different? Such that they don't know that they were dancing
because
to
capoeira is not just a dance. Capoeira is a self-defense. It's a self-defense fight.
Oh.
What's the idea to make as a dance? For the slave owners discovered that was a self-defense condition. Oh. That's why we dance capoeira. Other thing very interesting when you talk about capoeira, if you see that we do not dance capoeira standing. We do not do standing, we just lower ourselves. That's capoeira. One thing very interesting, remember what about senzalas? I told you about senzala, it's like the mental prison, physical prison for black people. Normally the senzalas, they are away from the houses, in the farms, coffee farms, sugarcane farms, they were away from the houses. When it was cold, the owner's house, they have kind of an elevated area, like a basement in their house. What they used to do, call the slaves to stay under the house to heat the house during the winter, during the cold days. And how the black people stay below their houses? We couldn't stay standing. That's why when you fight capoeira, change, we have to change 400 years of history. That's why it takes time, take generations. So capoeira was illegal, okay? But here I'm talking about samba. Samba was illegal until when?
Tia.
Tia Seata. So Tia Seata, as a leader, helping people, she helped to hide the samba musicians in her house. She helped a lot to hide capoeira fighters. Why? Nobody gonna mess with the friend of the president. She became the friend and she started to protect the samba musicians, capoeira in the area. But even with her protection, we still had problems. That's why when she asked a telephone and a job to her husband, which was provided to the police station, that's become so important because her husband in the police, he knows when the police was coming. What he used to do?
Call.
Start to call her. That's why the police never catch them. And finally, after popular movement, samba in 1913 finally becomes legal. When samba becomes legal, these three musicians made one song. And this is recognized as the first, so this was considered the first samba recorded in Brazil. Translation, the police chief through telephone warns me. Understood? The song is talking about all the illegal events in the city. And the police chief knew everything through the telephone. That's the history between Aunt Seata and her husband. And this became the first samba recorded in Brazil, 1913, when samba becomes legal, because of these three samba musicians. And that's the difference. Samba talk about life. Samba talk about life. And we have a dozen songs talking about her husband and Aunt Seata. And one thing very interesting, today, samba, it's a music who defines not just one city, but a country. But let's just give one explanation, okay? Samba of Rio, it's completely different from samba of Salvador and Minas Gerais. Especially because here in Rio, we play samba. In São Paulo, they play pagode. The difference are simple. Pagode, they talk about love, cheating sometimes. Samba talk about life. Life. And that's become a way for black people, especially people from favela, manifest themselves, say it about problems. Because hip hop, just like samba, was considered illegal music. Now, samba, hip hop. Now, recently we have, from São Paulo, another city council is trying to make funk illegal. What is the music? Poor neighborhoods, black neighborhoods, ghetto. That's the point. When you understand the black history, you understand we had to fight against the oppression. If the Afro-religion resisted all this time, it's because we faced the oppression. If the samba resist, it's because we keep it, we resist it. If the black tradition still is standing, it's because we resisted. That's why we have to talk about this in the history. We cannot say, I cannot say anymore, this is Brazilian culture. I can't. I'm forbidden to. I have to say it. But that's one history I know a long time. Why? My family is one of the founders of the samba school in my favela. When you say the samba comes from the high of the hill, we know where that samba comes from. Do you want to know a really good samba? Do you want to know when you go to samba in the street, you know when the samba is really good if you see the guy playing drums wearing any of these beads. Because the drums is Afro-religion. It's not just music, it's Afro-religion. When you see the samba rhythm, every samba school does Aurisha's rhythm. Salgueiro is protected by San Jorge and Xangô. That's why we have a rhythm called Barra Verde, which is that's a drum of my samba school. Other samba schools, for example, Mocidade, it's protected by Oxóssi. So they have like a hunter's rhythm. So every samba school has Aurisha protector. I don't need to say much where the culture came from, okay? But you know what's the problem? We suffer a lot with the racism. But if that culture was Jewish, people are going to say, that's Jewish. If it was Catholic, no, that's Catholic. But when it's black, oh, okay, let's forget about that. Let's not talk about this. That's why history is necessary to give us base to defend our culture. Let's move on. Racism is what we call structural racism. We have people, we don't see them in the representative points. Like, we don't have black people in justice. We don't have much black people as a senator, state councilor, federal councilor. We have more white people. For example, Salvador, 89% of the population of Salvador is black. But the parliament of Salvador, 90% is white.
How come? Why they don't vote themselves?
There is one thing we cannot explain much. That's why we have to pay attention. For example, I refuse to vote in people from Copacabana. I vote people from favela. And very recently I started to as a position, voting in women for city councilors. Because the women from favelas, they are more worried for what? Education, healthcare for the children. Not as a white society. We should send police to favela. Send police to favela, that doesn't work. I have 44 years born and raised in favela. I always saw police there and I never saw the drug dealing ending in favela. Do you know how the drug dealing is reducing my favela? We made schools in our favela, our own initiative. Today, we have finally a generation who doesn't work as a drug dealer. Finally. But how long it takes from my generation to this generation? 30 years. Focus on study. Now this generation, they don't want to work as a drug dealer. They want to do that business. They want to go to universities. My daughter represents part of this new generation. But what's the problem with the generation? When you have black kids in favelas from 13 years old until 25 years old, they have 78% to be killed by police. Black kids from favelas, they have 78% to be killed by police just because of the stereotype. If you're black, poor, live in favela, you are a drug dealer. And about girls. If you're black, poor, live in favela, so you are a prostitute. That's unfortunately is the stereotype. But in favela, we are not that. We have samba, we have funk, we have a lot of culture. But why you have to say that culture is wrong? You eliminate the power. Okay, to be successful in Brazil, you have to be just two things.
Footballer?
Football player and a samba musician. That's it. No, wrong, wrong. All the kids want to be a football player. What's the references? A lot. Neymar, Pelé, Ronaldo, Ronaldinho, all these names I said, all of them came from favelas. So if they become successful, why cannot be successful? But that's the problem. The filter of football, it's so tight. Even in the United States, when the people play American football, a lot of boys want to be an American football player. But how many becomes professional? Imagine in football in Brazil, all the kids want to be a football player. And they quit school. When they do 18 years old and they become professional, what happened? No instructions. They cannot have a job. What's the unique exit for them? Army. Because army in Brazil is obligated. When you do 18 years old, you have to go to the army.
Oh.
When you go to the army, you learn how to drive a motorcycle, to drive a car, so you can leave the army and work in delivery, transport. You can learn to do electric maintenance, to paint, so you can leave to do maintenance, things like that. Or you can do the easy way. How to shoot how to clean, and you come back to favelas and you work as a drug dealer.
How long is the army for this?
1 year service. 1 year service.
That's only
So
for
you
men?
pick.
For men. Women are not obligated, but she can go to the army. But here in Brazil, when you do 18 years old, you have to go to the army. Okay?
Okay. When you serve, do you decide what you are specializing in? Are you going to learn how to repair the motorbike or fix the motorbike, or are you? Everybody learns to shoot.
It's like, it's not a just choose. You have to see the conditions inside of that had the army headquarters, because depend of the army base, they have something. For example, to learn to drive, you have to go to the army where they do car maintenance, things like that. There is others, depends of the headquarters where you're serving, okay? For example, in my neighborhood, we have a school and communication service. So for example, my father, when he served the army, he served in that base next of our neighborhood. He was like a telephonist during the dictatorship. So he heard things, what he don't like to talk about it. And for some boys, it's the army. For the girls, in favela, we don't have much problem with the girls. What's the biggest problem for girls? Earlier pregnancy. That's the only problem. Because in the favela, we have majority of the people in favela, they are Protestant churches. And they don't like to talk about protection, sex, things like that. And that's why we have a lot of problem, okay? Because of our earlier pregnancy. So we have here a lot of orishas reference. Second floor, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, they do Afro-religion.
Oh.
In this house, we have like a commercial area where they have some, let's come inside. Some elements of the Afro-religion. For example, here we have the malandro, né, the hustler. We have some reference of the abayomi dolls, like the black dolls made. Fala aí, tudo bom? We have here some indigenous reference, for example, rapé, it's like a pound that they use. Here we have a reference of the elders, spirits, the Exu, Pombogira, gypsy spirits. Orishas reference, for example, necklaces, jewelry, cups. But that's a reference of female version of the malandros. Oh. We have the gypsies here. So all these groups like gypsies, malandros, and the black people all stay concentrated in the center. Okay? So we have here some reference of the orishas, Oxóssi, green. That's Ogun, depends, because Afro-religion is not just one line of thinking. We have, depends of the area, we have 4. Jeje, Keto, Yoruba, Nago. So depend of the area, it's different names or different doctrination about orishas. Mine is Yoruba. Oh, Yoruba represents Nigeria, Benin. So that's the area, that's the Orisha I talk. For example, Shango, he was the king of Oyo. Oyo today is called Nigeria.
Yeah.
So Shango was the king of Oyo. In Yoruba mythology, Shango was the king of Oyo.
There's actually even a place in Nigeria still called Oyo. There's a place called Oyo,
yeah,
still
Oyo.
Up to date.
Still called Oyo.
There's
for example,
called Ogun.
I heard about the name Oshun was a river.
There's Oshun State as well in Nigeria.
Wife.
Ogun. Yeah.
See, you see, when you say names of the Orisha, for some of us, we don't believe it was just names, but name of the cities, areas, or territories.
Yeah.
So the name of the Orishas, they are the name of the territories in Africa. So that's it. Do you know my salute for Nazi? A punch in his face. We don't talk with these people. We don't talk with these people anymore. There is no argument with these people. There is just a punch.
About Yoruba. So are there Brazilians who still speak Yoruba?
No, we don't speak Yoruba. The Yoruba, the only moment we speak Yoruba is during when we do like the Orisha salute.
Yeah.
For example, mine, Shango, we say Kao Kabesile. That's hail to the king. Yeah. Hail to the king Shango. Orayeye, when you salute Oshun, Epahe Oya, it's when you salute Oya. So we still have that. But if you do Candomblé, that's the Afro-religion, Candomblé. So in Candomblé, you may sing in Yoruba.
Okay.
I do Umbanda. Umbanda, we culture the Orishas, but we do not invoke them. What we
Okay.
invoke is spirits under the Orishas' demand.
Okay.
That's why we don't sing Yoruba, we sing in Portuguese. For example, we have a song in Portuguese where it's played in my Santeria's house. Is this song here. And this song has one specifically reason to pray. Is this song here.
Chama, chama.
Samba.
Chama no trabalhador. Chama no trabalhador.
This samba is amazing. Eu vou descendo o morro, a nega pensa que eu vou trabalhar. É muito bom. Eu vou descendo o morro. Now, the translation is amazing. Eu coloco um baralho no bolso, cachorro nas costas, no pescoço. Vou lá pra Praça Mauá, Mauá Square. That's the meeting point of the Malandros because next of the harbor. Now the chorus. The chorus is the most important. Trabalhar, trabalhar pra quê? Se eu trabalhar. Now the translation. Work, work for what? If I work, I will gonna die. That's the translation. Because the malandro, the hustler, he earned his life in an easy way.
Yeah.
Easy way. Voice, gambling. But in spirituality, he's a spiritual guide to keep us in a good path. To do everything okay, everything good. But if I work, I will gonna die. Because the hustler, malandro, the malandro, he represents the bohemian spirits. The bohemian makes life with the alcohol, with the gambling, a lot of things. But in Afro religion, this guide, he teaches about work. So the song says, work, work, work for what? If I work, I will gonna die. It means, what do you do for living? I make you living or surviving? Because it's a very compromised thing. So it's easy when you do wrong things and say, okay, any water? Beer? Já foi, o pessoal tá de boa. Obrigadão. We like to say, let's take the life much more easy. We love to make the things much complicated. Let's stop to do that.
Thank you so much for watching this episode. I hope you truly enjoyed it and you learned something new. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Don't forget to hit the like button, share and subscribe. I always say sharing is caring, so go ahead and share this episode and I will definitely see you on the next one. Until then, bye bye, kwaheri, ciao.